Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Let me just read it because I'm gonna get off on a tangent I wasn't actually ready. All right, I have no desire to be on the internet, but I've recently began to see more and more targeted individuals post their stories and experiences on YouTube, and have decided that I need to contribute mine, so hopefully people will understand just how bad things have gotten. I'm a slow thinker and I'm bad at words, so I'm going to write this down and read it on video to avoid going off topic and missing the whole point of making this. When I was 18 or 19, I came home and one of the neighbors came up to my driver's door screaming and hollering some nonsense. I couldn't figure out why he was so pissed, and I had to climb across the passenger side to get out. He was already there by the time I got out, right in my face, yelling and screaming. I thought he was going to hit me, but he just blocked my path, screaming in my face. I really wanted to hit him, but knew better. So I punched my windshield and broke my hand. The cops were called either by him or someone else, I don't know. He was obviously intoxicated, but somehow he didn't get arrested, and I was to blame for the whole incident. This has haunted me for more than 3 decades until I recently figured out what was going on. My whole life, I've never been able to make any real connections with people here in Ohio. I spent a short time in Florida as a young adult, and it was like a whole different world. I spent my entire adult life believing Southern people are just nicer. What I've learned, however, is that I moved to Florida before the targeting network, whatever it's called, I don't know, and electronic weapons had made it there. My goal was always to work on cars and have a family. My folks were academics, so college was expected, and autism and dyslexia weren't really known, or at least back then, or at least I didn't know that's why I was different. I'd been diagnosed with ADHD, but I didn't like how the drugs made me feel, so self-medicated with weed and alcohol. I don't recommend that. A friend invited me to move to Florida after my girlfriend dumped me, and I knew I needed to get away or would end up getting myself in trouble. After a failed marriage, I ended up back in Ohio. I always tried to make friends with people. I'd always feel like I was making a connection with someone and then something would change. Never understood what I was doing that drove people away. I still didn't know I was targeted or that level of evil even existed. Even my best friend who had moved me to Florida when I needed a fresh start had accused me of trying to steal his wife or sleep with, I don't remember, like something with his wife. I had one childhood friend that always stayed in touch, or so I thought. At 32, I met my second wife. 2 months later, we got married. I thought I had finally found the one that everyone had always talked about. Her brother wasn't happy that she had married me. I tried for several years to make friends with them. Normally, I would have not bothered, but since we were family and had a lot of common interests, I kept trying and failing to make any kind of connection with this guy. What I did start to notice is that my one childhood friend that seemed to stay friends with me, even though I thought I was in some way flawed and unlikable, had managed to make friends with this guy. It was weird. Our marriage was doomed from the start. Looking back, we weren't really suited for one another, but at that time, not knowing I was targeted, I assumed that everything was my fault. I fell into a depression and decided to go to a psychiatrist to tell me what was wrong with me. After a 10-minute session, this guy labeled me as bipolar, told me to go on disability, and put me on such strong drugs that I was basically a zombie. Eventually, I started to see a different doctor and got on different drugs that I didn't need. I quickly realized I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every attempt I made to work, people either treated me like I was completely incompetent and just lucky they let me in the building, or a complete idiot too stupid to understand they were making fun of me to my face. At this point, the energy weapons were getting worse, and the poisoning began. Not knowing I was targeted, I naturally assumed that my brother-in-law was responsible and that he had turned my wife against me. Looking back through clearer eyes, that's exactly what I was supposed to think. I was supposed to be a weapon. My brother-in-law or wife or any of the easily hundreds of gang stalkers were supposed to be the target. And of course, like any normal person would do, I turned to my childhood friend whenever I needed someone to talk to. Eventually, after several years of dodging poison with many close calls, energy weapon attacks, sleep deprivation, and every adult in my life treating me as if I were subhuman, except for my, childhood friend. One of the kids had gotten cancer. I believe I know what it was from, but that's not what this is about. My biggest fear was coming true. I'm convinced that the doctors and caregivers truly did do their best with the knowledge they had at the time. I was absolutely blown away with the kindness of people showed my daughter and our family during this time. I'd never experienced this from humans, and it kind of blew me away. Then one day, hospice was there checking on her, and she was asleep on the hospital bed. The newer hospice lady looked me straight in my face and said, "It's pretty messed up how she got it." She had that evil look that I expected from people. I told her it was pretty messed up how she got it. We stared at each other for a few seconds, and the regular lady broke the silence. After she passed away, I kept waiting for the cops or FBI to raid the house or ask me questions or something to happen. Nothing ever happened. After a few more months, still not knowing that targeting or gang stalking was even a thing, I knew if I didn't change environments, I wasn't going to live much longer. I also cut out my childhood friend because I realized he wasn't really a friend. Friends don't refer to you as bonehead, just like wives don't affectionately call you dumbass. So I decided I need to figure things out and limit who I talk to. Trust no one. I still tried to make connections, but to this day, everyone has been fake and seemingly had an agenda. After having at least 3 different incorrect diagnoses throughout my life, and my new doctor, this was right after I left my wife, the only one who I believe actually listened to my words, seemed kind of like he didn't really have any answers. I withdrew from the mental health scam. Also, I was still addicted to one of their drugs, which took several years to get off of, but I did. During this time, I have been able to see things clearer. I learned that while I do have ADHD, I also have autism and dyslexia. I learned that I'm not actually stupid, I just process things slower than most people. I've learned about targeted individuals, gang stalking, energy weapons, voice to skull, and I've learned that there are people experiencing these types of torture in every town, not just in our country, but in the world. I've witnessed grown adults bully and exclude my daughter simply because I'm her dad. I've had my young daughter ask me not to come to her school events because I make people uncomfortable. And I've witnessed people I know aren't evil. I've witnessed people I know aren't evil people participate in my torture. I had to walk away from another job that I really liked, working with good people, because the energy weapons and voice to skull was just unbearable. I've reflected on my childhood friend. I realized that everyone he's been friends with over the years have ended up in jail or divorced or having hard times. I've realized that I have, I believe, 5 grown children that nobody ever told me about. And I've realized that gang stalkers are slaves to the Baby Toucher Club or the 3-letter agencies behind this shit show. I've realized that all of the division is architected by these meat puppeteers like my fake best friend. I've seen several YouTube creators talking about a civil war, but what are the sides? Slaves against targets? Political party A against political party B? Or are we smart enough to see that we as targets are just trying to survive, while the slaves, aka gang stalkers, are literally torturing people because they got into something they can't get out of and now have to go to sleep at night knowing that each and every day they are on call to do harm to a complete stranger simply because their master said so. And to those of you bullying children simply because their dad is on some list, shame on you, and may God have mercy on your soul. That's my experience being targeted. People still come in my home just to let me know they can. People still show up wherever I go. People still try and get me to attack them or act a fool in some way. And why? Because I became friends with a narcissist when I was in junior high. That's why. Never hurt no one. Don't have dirt on anyone. Not that these are excuses to torture someone. But this is all. My whole life of confusion, isolation, my kids' lives of growing up probably thinking their dad is evil, or my other kids' lives being at the least robbed of my true potential, bullied because I'm her dad, or I believe suffering and dying. All because of who I became friends with when I was in junior high. That's my story as a targeted individual.